Christine, that as soon as the cost of the technology was less than the expected reduction in liability exposure that technology would cause, insurance, meaning Flo, the Gecko, and Michael, would all be out there pushing it because they could make money on it. They could give it away. That's where the insurance has such an opportunity. Where we got in trouble up to this point when we did crash mitigation, when we crash cars. Yes, we save lives, but as Christine pointed out, the cost of each crash went up. So of course there was no money available from the insurance industry to pay for it. It was costing them more. The argument is here is that the crash doesn't occur because of this. In sufficient amount, then the cost should go down. And then there is money on the table for them to go in there, be happy, and pay for it.
Thanks very much. First, a shameless plug for my book, No One at the Wheel, Driverless Cars and the Road of the Future. The working title was Driverless Cars, the Good, the Bad, the Ugly. And Robbie and Jill actually covered various elements of it, and I'll be able to speak through a few things, plus they have been covered already. So in Truth versus Hype, these were the similar quotes to what we saw before. And I think Jill made the point.
It's okay.
And we have lots of other quotes that people have come up with saying we're not right there. And I think the curves that Jill showed were quite telling of it. So I won't spend time on this. And also rethinking X, believing that some of the hype, or maybe hyping themselves, Jill showed about 11% by 2030, by the end of the next decade. And here we have someone saying 95% of passenger miles, which I don't know if that includes transit on it. So let's deal with the big impetus, at least here in this country, is safety. And in the United States, and I did deliberately say the United States, people say 94% of fatalities are because of human beings. Well, then it's a very easy equation. You remove the human being, and you save 94%. But there's something wrong with that, because other countries have said, wait a second, we could save a lot of lives and get closer to that 90% without waiting for autonomous vehicles. We could do it right now. Sweden says humans are fallible. And yes, maybe you can blame them for some percentage of the crashes, but they're fallible, they're dumb, they drink and drive, make poor decisions, they look at technology, but that doesn't mean we give them a death sentence. So let's try to protect themselves from themselves. And as a result, the Swedish fatality rate over the past 20 years has plummeted 62%. And in fact, the US rate is 4 times that of Sweden. So if we were able to mimic everything that Sweden was doing, I know that's a bit impossible, but we have a level there of about minus 80% in crashes if we come close to the Swedish rate. And some of this was discussed. Wonderful. Where? You. Okay. And some of the technologies, and this was discussed, Jill had shown that. Forward collision warning, the benefits, and this comes from the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety. So much of this has been covered. Forward collision warning with auto brakes by IAHS says the combination of those two can reduce injury crashes and all severity crashes by half. Now, many countries are recognizing that these ought to be standard features. 40 countries under the auspices of the United Nations got together and said, let's make these standard features. And the first one, automatic emergency braking standard, as soon as 2020. And the other features that I showed and Jill showed also within the next couple of years. But 2 countries did not sign on to that. the United States and China, and here we are in the United States. What can we do about that, getting these standard? And again, Jill showed a very good slide that over 40% may not have these features even within 10 years in the United States. And there's the story about self-driving is already safer. Now, I have no doubt when we really have full AVs, we're going to see reductions in crashes, but we can see it now. And Alan has pointed this out many times, it's safe driving. But so far, the data is not very good. And I've shown this before, I showed it before here. And no one has stepped up to say, Sam, you're wrong, there's better data out there. So I even put an unfair on this because all I'm relying is on small sample sizes, one state, and following some media reports. If you've got better data, let me know. So far we have 3 known fatalities. I know there was possibly a 4th in March, which we're still waiting for the NTSB to see if it was in autonomous mode. 3 fatalities. To reach that, and again, unfair, you would have to drive about 259 million miles in a conventional car for 3 deaths. Too small to make any conclusion there. But the state of California, the only state that is collecting data on crashes when vehicles are in self-driving mode, is California. So far, the stats are not so good. So the stats are that Google Waymo is crashing every 55,000 miles, or having a crash. GM Cruise every 12,000 miles, which has conventional vehicles every 492,000 miles. But the data is so scarce. If you've got better data, share it. But I can tell you that how difficult it is for me, and I've been doing research on this, to try to find the data. So help me get the data. If I'm wrong, let me know. Now the other part of this is, it's true, switching passengers from cars ultimately to full AVs will save lives, no doubt about that. But there's another thing, and that is taking them from transit will actually increase fatalities. So you've got to be careful of who you're attracting to autonomous vehicles. Cars today, 653 deaths per 100 billion miles, turn those into AVs, and even if 90% safer, and I think that might be on the high end, you have 65 deaths. Well, look at transit. Transit's already 95% safer. So safety is what you're really pushing to get people into transit. And we hear very little of that. As I go to many conferences, very little is spoken about transit as a safety feature. AVs are the only way to safety. And if we spend more time in cars, it's not only that we're going to save people in crashes, but we may lose people by spending more and more time in cars. When we look at the extreme commutes, you may see far more extreme commutes. Maybe the autonomous car will have an elliptical in it or something else that people can do. But if you saw the recent YouTube by Volvo, full disclosure, I drive a Volvo. A person wakes up in the Volvo, has breakfast in the Volvo, works in the Volvo, has lunch, I think delivered by drone in the Volvo, has a business meeting in the Volvo, has a romantic dinner in the Volvo, and then goes to sleep in the Volvo. So while we're talking about having fleets, we see some of the car owners looking at how attractive it is for you to own a car that you never have to use your legs again. And this was already, Wally Hollywood did this for us, and Wally is the extreme version of autonomous vehicles. And I always think it's good, as the scientists in this room, engineers, to go to infinity. What does it look like at infinity? At infinity that looks like this. Your chair is autonomous. We would have all arrived here in our chairs, and we would have never been able to use, to walk on it. And inactivity and obesity is an epidemic, and it's soon approaching smoking as the #1 killer on the planet. And in terms of ratios of cause of death, too many motor vehicle crash deaths, but obesity inactivity kills about 4 times as many people. So let's say we do a good job and we do reduce crashes by half, but we increase obesity and activity deaths by 10%. We may end up in the same place in terms of the number of deaths. There's this belief that traffic is going to get better with autonomous vehicles. But so far, I have not seen independent studies. I've seen plenty of hype, but the independent studies I've seen have said something else. First of all, a glimpse into the future, at least this first half of the century, with autonomous vehicles. They'll be fleet-owned in many people's minds. But we have an example of that. It's the Uber, it's the Lyft, it's the Via, Juno, Cat, and others. TNC's transportation network companies. So the future, 2035, 2040, as the vehicle arrives, and it's based on an app or whatever replaces an app, and your car arrives. So what has happened with that? It's exactly an Uber, except you're removing the driver. The promise of Uber and Lyft and others was we would see a sharp reduction in driving. And that's what we're going to track. The reality, and I showed 2 cities here, but I have lots of cities data. In Boston, if they had not used the Uber, the Lyft, the TNC, about 18% would have driven. But that leaves 82% doing something else, and in most cases, it means more vehicles on the road, because in Boston, 42% came out of public transportation, 12% walk or bike, taxis, another 5% were newly generated trips. Somewhat similarly in Denver, 26% came out of driving, public transportation, 22%, walking and biking exceed the number of driving, but in any case, this is added vehicle miles traveled. The second part of it is, for an app-based car, if you look right at the bottom in blue, the app-based cars travel 1.58 miles for each passenger mile. So that car arrives, if I pull the Uber here, it arrives empty, takes me to my destination, and then leaves empty. On average, about 1.6 miles per passenger mile is traveled. And so life without driverless cars and life with driverless cars. There's also, as you know, pedestrians are the problem. Autonomous vehicles would have no problem in cities if we got rid of people. They work great. But this comes from a 2019 Toyota Camry with their pedestrian detection system. If you're a toddler, shorter than 3.2 feet, or you're a basketball player, watch out. And if you're wearing oversized clothing, if you're bending forward, if you're closely in groups wearing the same color as surroundings, your walls, changing speed abruptly, all of these things. Someday maybe they'll be solved, but I still think we're pretty far away from really recognizing, understanding what a pedestrian will do, what a bike rider will do. Now we have the new scooters, the e-scooters, and all the other forms of transportation that are out there. So, in order to do today's talk, I met with somebody from the year 2100 who told me what she could do, and she actually came here. She's here right now, the only one who could see her. Her name is Melissa, so everybody please say hello, Melissa.
Hello, Melissa.
Thank you. Melissa, in the year 2100, is 85 years old. In 2019, she is my 4-year-old granddaughter. It turns out that in 2100, if you have identical genomes that encode neurons, you can communicate with a grandfather. I don't know why it's grandfather's, but she came back and she said, Grandpa, I know you're involved in transportation. We had a terrible century. That century, climate change was devastating. Cities collapsed, and transportation was one of the significant factors in it. So I said, tell me more about it. So she brought me a video over here, and she said by 2030 we had a lot of vehicles in autonomous mode, and people soon began gaming the system, knowing that they're going to stop. And the AV industry just wouldn't put up with that. So they created these fences, and the cars moved really fast. And the pedestrians were treated like cattle behind cattle gates. And as a result, cities became less livable. People moved out of cities, and people just drove more and more, almost a repeat of the second half of the 20th century. So how do we do it right? We've got a longer list. I'll quickly go over a few things. One is, and many of you said, sell rides, not cars, integrate with transit. And this has to be an agreement, which doesn't exist now. Government, society, industry, they don't work together. I think AV 3.0 that came out of the federal government said, what's good for AV, in my interpretation, what's good for AVs is good for America, get out of the way and let the AV industry do what it wants to do. Sell rides, not cars, and integrate with transit. This is the moment. The AV industry particularly relies on good infrastructure. I was in charge of New York City's infrastructure. Boy, we've got problems there, but we have problems across the country. So now is the moment where maybe we can get the AV industry support for roads. Maybe can send some money out. Establish an AV street typology plan so we have absolute agreement that the AVs coming into cities, and these are cities that I'm talking about, you have car-free zones, no way you can tell the AV to go there. No way can you tell on a school street, a slow street, that you can go 20 miles an hour or 30 miles an hour. On freeways, you can go whatever the speed limit is, but it requires an agreement and everybody to adhere to that. And right now, humans don't adhere to that. Utilize pricing, maintain and support good mass transit. There's a lot of bad mass transit, and that's, by the way, perhaps the biggest opportunity for autonomous vehicles is to replace bad mass transit. The once every 30-minute lumbering bus, particularly in low-income communities. There's a lot of public transportation today is really poor transit for low-income people. Emphasize last mile, talk about equity, and I was recently at a car company talking about that, and there's a rate of 4, and they said, why should we care about equity? And I said, well, maybe there'll be a bigger middle class and more people will buy their cars. I don't think they thought that for me, but don't mess with like head growth, all the good things that we have been seeing, lots of opportunities that are out there. And so I'd just like to